Hi, Joris.
Hey, Manuel. Good morning.
Morning. How are you doing? I guess we are not online yet, are we?
I think it just went online.
All right.
Yeah. So
We've got JC as attendee.
JC was in there. I'm not sure if he's still. Yeah, he's in there. We had about 20 people enrolling. So let's hope. Let's give it a few more minutes and let's see if more people join. Huh?
All right.
I did upload your slides as well. And if all went well, you should be able to take control over the slideshow and browse ahead.
All right. Great. Yeah, that's more convenient than telling you, hey, please go to the next slide. So great.
Of course, yeah. Is my mic working well?
Sorry?
Is my microphone working well?
No, it is working right. I can hear you well.
Perfect. I'm trying out something new.
All right.
Let's give it 3 more minutes. Worst case, we can just record the presentation and we can distribute it as a movie afterwards. Huh?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, we're 5 minutes after. Let's just do the presentation and distribute it.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah. All right. So welcome to this webinar. Today we will be talking about Amazon Quicksight and how we can use it to solve data problems at large using cloud-first technology. So my name is Joris van den Borre. I'm the founder of Tropos.io. We are a Belgian-based cloud-first data analytics company. We're partnering up with AWS today to give you some information about what we did with Amazon Quicksight. And today here with me, we have Manuel Delgado Tenorio. Manuel, can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure, Joris. Thanks very much. Yeah, as you said, my name's Manuel Delgado. I'm based out of Madrid, Spain, helping customers throughout many different countries in Europe. I'm a quick set sales specialist, meaning that I help customers to understand the benefits of QuickSight and how to adopt it in their organizations.
Okay, thank you, Manuel. And today we will be discussing a number of subjects relevant to the topic. And let's first start with the business challenge. And we will frame the challenge we solve with QuickSight. We'll focus on QuickSight, but we will as well discuss the broader AWS analytics space a little bit more because it might matter in the context of our clients. Then I will hand over the word to you, Manuel, again, to discuss the view of AWS on Amazon QuickSight. And then I will take over again with some case studies that we did. Some for ISVs, some for the public sector, some were embedded, some were traditional business intelligence use cases. And we can tie the scalability of AWS and QuickSight to that. So why this is really something different from what we did in the past when we did BI projects. And as Tropos, we have been doing projects like this for a while by now. So we saw a few blueprints and we saw a few patterns. And we were actually able to distill a number of blueprints and standard offerings to get you up and running with QuickSight really fast, should you want to give it a try. So throughout the whole presentation, you will be able to ask us questions. So on the right-hand side, there's a chat box. Feel free to drop your questions in the chat box. And if we have time at the end of the presentation, somebody from our site will be picking up the questions. In case we shouldn't have enough time to answer all of the questions, we will get back to you over email or get in touch with you for a Zoom call. So our presentation will take about half an hour with some time for Q&A then left. As I said, feel free to ask questions through the chat box. But let's first talk about the kind of problem we solve. Data is everywhere today. Operational systems, systems that people use every day to do their jobs, generate loads of data. And more we face the fact that we need to be able to distill and to integrate insights out of these systems into presentations or visualizations that people understand and that they can act quick upon. This is a business challenge to solve, of course. And we need to dive into the heads of people who run business processes. We really need to understand what KPIs matter and how to present this information to people who have to act quick upon that. And that isn't the easiest exercise to make. And typically, we have data dispersed across different places, different source systems, all across the web. And it all has to integrate in a convenient place. People have also need also to be able to build their own insights. Typically, if we do this kind of business intelligence exercise, take data together and present it, it is a huge IT effort to be able to deliver that. Means that people who need insights need to describe these insights very specifically to IT teams. IT teams typically take a long time to deliver insights, and then business can start to iterate on that. With the speed of business of today, we notice that business needs to take control over far more aspects of this whole process, and they need to be able to sit in the driver's seat and to make those insights themselves. One more critical aspect these days is to tailor access to data on an individual basis. We are based in Belgium. We are working under the GDPR rules, means that private data needs to be shielded from prying eyes or from users who don't have the access, the rights to act upon that sort of data. This is a governance matter. And if we do business intelligence, either for business users inside organizations or embed business intelligence into applications for ISVs, all of these aspects are really important governance matters. So it means that the less time we can spend on building IT, tailoring IT, and the more time we can spend on having business discussions, doing insightful work with data, the faster we can improve on business. And this is actually the sort of problem we are trying to tackle with AWS Quicksight. And we are really working with a tool that is quick to roll out, quick to share with business users, quick to embed into ISV's dashboards, and quick to start prototype IDs on. By the end of the presentation, we will share an example roadmap of how fast we can do it, but it's not the end stage. It is actually an entry point into doing far larger, far more complex business intelligence, data analytics exercises, but totally business driven. And because of the entry point being so low and the learning curve being so flat, Amazon Quicksight is something that we typically position really early on in the projects. And by doing so, we are actually totally able to redesign the process of demand management, of capacity management, of skill management for business intelligence teams. And that is actually the value of cloud for us. By outsourcing much of the pure IT work, automating much of the deployment work, of the scaling work, we are able to focus on what really matters to work with data, that is capturing insights and sharing those across user bases. We are able to go way faster in business intelligence projects. That's actually the value that we expect and that we can deliver using technology such as Amazon Quicksight. Now, that is how we as a consulting company use Quicksight, why we love it, why we keep on using it more. But it's just our view. And let's skip over to Manuel to give us a review on AWS. The floor is yours, Manuel.
Thanks very much, Joris. So yes, well, let me try and can I actually move this? Oh yes, I can. So that's great. Thank you. Let's talk a little bit more about Quicksight because many of you probably don't know or are not really familiar with our service. Quicksight is AWS's main business intelligence offering. So that's typically used in the most common BI cases that you can imagine. So you can use it for internal reporting purposes, etc. Although today we will focus on, well, what Joris was introducing before, which is how Quicksight helps ISVs, digital native businesses, whoever needs to share data and insights with their end customers, their end users, right? So just to give you a clear idea of the kind of, the size and the potential, the power behind Quicksight today, we're talking about a BI solution that is now featured on Gartner's Magic Quadrant. Although it is pretty young, pretty new in the market, meaning it's been around for, I don't know, maybe 5-6 years already, but it's growing a lot in terms of functionality and customer base. We can be very happy. We are helping a lot of many different customers in many different industries across all geographies. And that is supported by a huge engineering effort to make a robust and really powerful product. That is typically translated into, a hectic rhythm in innovation, meaning last year, 2020, we released 70 new features. And this year, 2021, we will be releasing more than 100. That's more than 2 or around 2 every single way. We distinguish ourselves by, in several different themes, basic themes, but the one that I personally I'm most proud of, and I really stress our customers to pay attention to it, is our machine learning capabilities that are embedded, that are included within the product, meaning that you can create machine learning models for forecasting or for understanding what's going on in your data, anomaly, outliers detection, and things like that, without relying on a external kind of, a different department, the advanced analytics guys within your organization or things like that. You can do that directly within Quicksight, and it's great. And you will also see that we now have a strong cognitive capabilities that are actually allow that, expectation of the self-service BI initiative, in which customers, end users, can easily ask questions in natural language to the system and get an answer in just a couple of seconds. So that's really one of the main strengths of Quicksight, and that's the one that I love. And in terms of scalability, we will get there in just a minute. We are serverless, we are of course cloud-based, and we are versionless, and that allows us to scale as much as we need. Just to give you an example of that, we inside Amazon, we are more than 1 million registered users for Quicksight. And every single day, 150,000 of us actively engage with Quicksight. So we are talking about a scalability and high availability at scale and without any limits. And given that this is serverless and entirely cloud, you guys don't need to pay attention to capacity provisioning and making sure that the machines are up and running and high availability, and how to scale when something, for instance, if you are in retail and Black Friday or Christmas season is approaching or whatever, you don't have to pay attention to that, because that's on us. We take care of that so that your system runs smoothly. So that's basically, the current status of a solution that is helping organizations, as I say, all throughout the world. Probably I would be repeating myself if I just read you everything that is written here, so I will try and avoid that. But let me stress just a couple of things that I have just said. First of all, remember, we are serverless, etc., meaning you can scale up to the amount of users that you need. Also, that we leverage machine learning within the product without relying on an advanced analytics department or whatever as much as you need. We even have this new Quicksight Q add-on that was released last year. It was announced in the ninth reInvent, which took place in 2020. And that allows you to ask a simple question such as, show me sales for this customer in this geography last year, and you will get a chart with the answer in just a few seconds and things like that. But what is maybe more relevant today is our ability to embed BI dashboard in your own internal or external applications. This means that you can provide your users with rich data and insights right where they are. So ISVs typically use this to enrich their core product with additional, as I say, data and insights that help their end customers. And they even create new products or new, add-ons or additional tiers in their product offering or things like that, in order to monetize those data and insights. And they do that very easily in many using or leveraging different ways of doing that. Just to name you the main ways in which you can leverage these embedded analytics options within your web portals and your customer-facing web applications, we have got now 3 different ways of doing that. You can use the one-click dashboard embedding. Its name says it all. It's very easy, very straightforward. You can do it just with one click. That's not typically the case for ISVs companies that want to share data and insights with their end customers, but that's more used for, in the case of a wiki or an internal portal where you share information with your own colleagues and things like that. But you can also leverage that internally. For external publishing, we recommend our API embedding that allows you to use both flavors here. You can use it with authenticated users, meaning you've got named users that are registered in some, identity provider, be it IAM, our own identity provider, or some other Active Directory or wherever, and you can have those authenticated users authenticating all through the identity stack, and then enjoying all the security features so that they only see their data and so on in a seamless manner. Or you can use this other flavor, which allows you to use what we call anonymous users, and that can be fully anonymous, meaning a entirely open public application that someone can use without even logging in, or it can be anonymous from the Quicksight perspective, but the user might be authenticating with your own legacy application using your framework, wherever, and then simply passing on the credentials to Quicksight so that those users can still use the same level of security and personalization than if they were fully authenticated through the system, right? So that's flexible, that's powerful, and we always say embedding is actually the last stage, defining the dashboard, creating them, making sure they actually make sense and provide value to the end user. That's the real project, or that's the real work to be done. And embedding is just the last mile in your project, and we have made it as easy as possible for you guys. So that's basically what I wanted to share with you today. And back to you, Joris.
Thank you, Manuel. Love the insights that you shared on the scalability side and the integration part, because those are actually things that we are really using inside of projects. So we have been delivering Quicksight-based business analytics projects for a few years now, and we would love to discuss a few use cases here. And I would like to differentiate between the standalone use cases and the embedded analytics use cases. And because, as you said, everything starts with defining a business idea, making sure you get a visualization, you get a dashboard, you iterate on that until you are really happy with what you have on your screen. You can do it as a business analyst, and then you can leave it there. You can keep it as a standalone analytics product, or you can share it across your ISV and users, and then you can start to embed it, which is actually an extra step at the very end of the delivery cycle to make sure that the insights are distributed. So if we differentiate between those two use cases, well, our target audience is going to be a little bit different. So typically we use Quicksight when we migrate from more traditional BI tools into something cloud first. If we do so, we do it because we either want to lift and shift a current data warehouse to cloud. And we notice that the business intelligence front-end technology doesn't really scale the way cloud scales. And that's where Quicksight comes in. Or if we have a greenfield project, we build a data set or a data warehouse in cloud, and we don't have any front-end technology on top of that, and we don't want to waste time setting up, maintaining, installing, patching front-end technology. That's typically the use case where we use Quicksight just by itself in a, say, enterprise traditional BI environment. But more and more, we started working with ISVs, and that's where embedding analytics became more important. It's often a matter of companies scaling fast, having demanding early adopters as customers, people who want to have more control over the insights they get out of a tool. It can be, say, social media, it can be edtech, it can be martech, it can be fintech. And those clients are demanding in terms of data. They really want to have control over the data provided by their ISV, or the way the data is processed, their own data is processed by their ISV. And then it often takes too long for an ISV to deliver tailor-made dashboards. So there we started embedding technologies such as Quicksight to make sure that the ISV end client is able to design their own dashboards and iterate without being dependent on the ISV. And that's actually quite a huge successful use case there. We've been able to match, we've been able to onboard larger client bases in actually no time. If you would look at the output of those teams, um, we're talking about weeks, sometimes months, but mostly weeks. The other type of user that can really benefit from embedding analytics in their known way of working are actually process operators. So people who typically work inside of CRMs, sometimes accountants, people who are familiar using a certain technology or certain interface and who want to extend it with data analytics capabilities. We actually have use cases for both of these. What I would like to share as well is the integration effort that is needed. If we're doing standalone analytics, well, actually, Amazon is making our life easy because we can set up Quicksight with a few clicks. So the integration effort to just have the product is really low. We can start really fast, and we can start drafting business ideas really fast. And when it comes to embedding analytics, there's a bit more architecture because it's typically more of a technological effort to do there. It has to fit. And we noticed that Quicksight is able to fit in many different philosophies of designing software applications, which is quite an interesting approach for us to use because if we have to plug in into some application that was already out there, we often didn't have control over how that was designed. And we need to mix and match sometimes a bit of new technology with technology that's out there for a while. And actually, Quicksight is doing a great job there. We've never really had any real challenges in making sure we can get something up and running at the quality that a client wants. And in terms of maintenance effort, it's all the same. Actually, we, as a data analytics company, we want to focus on delivering business value, not on installing patches or keeping software alive. And Amazon is taking care of that for us. And one last important thing to share is the integration ecosystem. So if you have Quicksight and you use it to present insights based on data, that data has to reside somewhere. When we use Quicksight on its own, when clients are new with business analytics or just starting out or just drafting business ideas without willing to invest into large transformations yet, well, Quicksight can just stand on its own. We don't even need a real database behind it, and Quicksight has its own embedded in-memory database, if you want, to make sure data can be integrated and aggregated, well, say, without the effort of building a data warehouse. But if you do have a data warehouse and it's governed and it's managed and it's clean and it's using recent technology, well, we can actually plug on top of that. And we have different use cases that highlight the benefits of both of those use cases. When we're embedding, well, we typically integrate with a data warehouse. Those are use cases that scale fast. Typically, those use cases onboard new data sets at a high pace, and the data volumes are typically a bit larger. So that's where a data warehouse, such as an Amazon Redshift, comes in, where we prepare the data before it's getting visualized and distributed across larger bases. And sometimes we even plug in into operational sources. And say if we would have to report on a Jira, I think there's a native connector to Jira. We can just plug in and share those insights from the way our delivery teams are working without putting any database in between. If you would have to put a database in between, it means a bit more development work. If we can plug in right on top of systems that already exist, it means go to market faster, but we might face a bit of performance loss along the way. And the beautiful thing is we can migrate from one model to the other. And we typically start out standalone, and then we migrate into a larger ecosystem once we understand what the real needs are. So we have a few use cases, actually two, that I would like to discuss, where we used Quicksight to make sure that we could deliver business results as fast as possible. And the first one is a non-obvious one. It's actually a public sector case. It has actually to do with processing grants based on requests. So in Belgium, where we live, parents are able to request study grants from our government um, and get those paid out if those parents match certain requirements, income level, socioeconomic conditions, and so on and so forth. And we used to have a process that took quite a while to go from a request to a payout. And it mainly had to do because of two reasons. And one reason was a technological reason, the other reason was a process reason. Let's start with the process reason. Yeah? We, we used to have a team of about 20 case managers who needed to accept and distribute work related to auditing and analyzing those requests amongst each other. And the team was out there. The team was well organized. It was structured, but it was very hard for that team to get information in at the right pace. Sometimes we had huge bumps in requests. It was hard to prioritize based on certain criteria what request to take first and what to postpone. And sometimes, well, actually nothing came in, and it was very hard to distribute the sort of lesser prioritized work across those periods of low demand from an organizational point of view. Now, from a technical point of view, we had different source systems. We didn't really have an automated process. We didn't have a governed process. And we didn't really have BI front-end technology that was able to serve this audience of about 20 people in an efficient way. And because this is like really an IT-enabled business transformation, and the IT part wasn't really designed out the way the team actually needed, looking back at it. So we had a few really sharp requirements. When the customer reached out, they said, hey, this turnaround time, this 9 months, it has to be reduced. We want a process. It needs to be far more efficient. People working on those cases need to work efficient. And we want to aim high. From 9 months, we want to go to 3 months. And we took the challenge. Another requirement was that the case managers actually had to collaborate. And so they really needed to have information about each other's cases so that they could understand if there was any kind of overlap between those cases. So somehow they needed a central source of data, a central view on data, and they really needed to understand what the overlapping criteria were and the overlapping parameters were between all of those cases, without doing anything manual, of course. And a third requirement was that the problem was actually so large that the case managers themselves needed to be able to dive into the details of the case without having IT backend support. So the client did have a data engineering team. They did have people available, but tweaking and changing the way data was presented to case managers was actually out of scope for that team. And which is an important one because it means that the case managers needed to be data literate and they needed to have an interface that was tailored to the way they actually work with cases. So those people are not data analysts by trade. They're people who have to do data analysis on top of the case management that they do. So the learning curve here was really important. And as a last argument, we needed to prioritize. Somehow we needed a solution that was able to take certain arguments into account, apply some business rules to that, and make sure that the next best action for any kind of case manager was available on screen without people having to overthink their typical types of work that were involved. So all of these things were either not possible in the past or required a lot of manual processing work. And hence the 9 months of time required to go between a request and a payout. So we were challenged and we were tasked with a very small project. And we had about 3 months, I think, to make sure we could go from whatever source system they had to cloud. We needed to set up AWS in a compliant manner. We needed to transfer data in a compliant manner, which was really important. And we needed to make sure that we could roll out a solution that was able to serve this audience of 20. If you look at what's required for this, it's actually not an easy task because it's a combination of pretty technical IT work to make sure we have something up and running that is actually scalable. And on the other hand, something that is actually accessible to people who are not data analysts by trade. So we went to AWS and we delved into the ecosystem. And we were able to build an architecture that was able to capture all of these business requirements at actually a very low cost. So the first thing we needed to do was make sure that we could replicate the right kind of information from their on-premise situation to their cloud situation. And we took a component from AWS that is able to replicate data. It's actually a data pump that takes data and replicates it into another system. That other system was the start of what was about to be a larger data warehouse afterwards, but technology that we sourced specifically from AWS to capture, to store, to govern, and to integrate data related to those use cases. And we built an analytical database on top of that. So an analytical database is actually a kind of data model, a pre-prepared data set that is really convenient for business users to work with and to understand, and that is able to be integrated in front-end technologies such as Quicksight with a very low level of effort afterwards. And this analytical database is actually critical into success of this use case. We have worked a lot with business people speaking about business concepts, talking about data quality, talking about business rules, about prioritization rules, about next best actions, to make sure that whatever was in that analytical database was really convenient to understand and to reuse afterwards without any IT involvement at all. So finally, we were able to deliver all of this. It's the third component that we added on top of this was Quicksight. This has been, say, 2 years ago. So Quicksight, it wasn't new on the market then. We took it in the first instance because it was readily available and it was allowing us to move fast without setting up additional technology. But along the way, it had shown to be super powerful. It was powerful because end users didn't really have this steep learning curve that they would have with traditional tools that they already had for 10 years. But it was also convenient because it turned out that we could embed Quicksight into the applications that they were using every day. And so they typically work in some kind of a case management tool, and think about a CRM-like tool, where they see requests and where they can define actions on those requests. But in the same screen, we were able to add these dashboards and these analytical insights. Looking back at the project, that was a critical step because it prevented people from context switching, so losing their focus, diving into other tools, and making the mental switch that they were actually about to do some kind of another task. And once we did a review of what we did, and we look at what went wrong and what went right, this embedding piece turned out to be really important in terms of adoption. I cannot stress enough that people who were working with these kind of solutions, well, they haven't been recruited for data analytics jobs. Their job is something different. This came on top. So we really, really, really needed to focus on the change management aspect of all of this. And the embedding was crucial there. And as a result, well, it took us about 4 months to roll out this whole project. And so about 20 case managers were onboarded. They had a daily status update of the current cases, and that's through a central dashboard. At first, the product owner, so the person who tasked us with the challenge, they asked for real-time updates. We delivered real-time updates, but then we noticed that cases came in at high speed at some points in time, and it was actually not practical any longer for people to deliver on real-time changes in their workload prioritization. So the product owner asked us to turn back the updates, and bring it back to about one update a day. And that was about to be the sweet spot. If we have an update in the morning, then we can provide the daily status meetings for those case managers with new priorities, and then new cases that came in, also with cases that were pending for too long. And people could take action on those cases within the time frame of a day. Really the sweet spot for those case managers. And once we started using the project and once the user base grew, we noticed that the costs to own and support and govern the platform, they scale linearly with the amount of users that have been involved in the project. And that was a huge, huge shift in understanding how to deal with data analytics from that point on. So people were used to making a leap of faith, purchasing a certain product, doing a data analytics project, and hoping everything went well. Those were ways of doing this kind of project in the past. Hence the reason that the whole project wasn't automated yet. And by sourcing everything from cloud and by making sure all of the components that we were sourcing for this kind of projects could scale in terms of capacity and in terms of cost, we had a totally different understanding of how project costs could evolve. So cost is one, but performance and service to the end user is something else. So by right sizing, and so actually purchasing the capacity that we need based on the demand and based on the people who were working that day and based on the requests that came in, we were actually able to buy just about the right capacity, just about the right number of licenses, about the right size of data warehouse to be able to give this the optimal performance to every of those single analysts. So, and finally, something that was really important from the start and that we could actually deliver at the end was the end-to-end auditability of the data. So, due to the nature of the case management, it's very important to understand what happens when with a case. So if an action was taken, if an action was postponed, anything that went on with the data needed to be traceable. And by keeping the set of technologies really compact and to make sure that every action was logged, we were able to deliver those end-to-end traces. And in terms of architecture, there's also a small picture here below. We used AWS Quicksight as a front-end technology. There's an analytical database hosted on AWS as a central source of data. We use an open source product called dbt to make sure we can govern those business rules. And our data is fed in through database migration services, which is actually this linking pin between an on-premise database who registers the cases and our Quicksight frontend. And if we take this kind of use case, we can build on that. So we did the same kind of work for ISVs, as we mentioned before a few times already. And the use case for an ISV isn't that different. Typically, they generate data themselves or they accept data from a third party. They need to process that. They need to apply intellectual property and very specific business rules on top of that. And they need to make sure that people who use their technology have access to very detailed insights at a very high SLA. And that's typically a challenge. We often see ISVs starting out on that journey themselves and building custom graphs, custom interfaces, because it's just the way those teams are organized. And they're typically, when ISVs start out, they're typically UX teams, backend teams, people who are like really, really good at customizing very beautiful graphs. But when they scale, it turns out that it's economically not viable to scale those teams. So when we work with that sort of organizations, the approach is mostly the same. And we did a use case. This use case can actually apply to a number of projects we did. We did it for a company in ad tech lately. We did it for a sustainability consulting company. We did it for a CO2 management company. With most of the time, mostly the same backend architectures. So it's always a matter of taking the data from the systems where it resides, making sure we can centralize all of that data into an analytical database. And the difference with ISVs is that they often do require real-time updates, making sure that database is powerful enough to process all of those changes at a very high service level, and then making sure that we can put a front-end technology on top of that we can distribute to end users. And those end users, as we said before, are typically very demanding in terms of customizability, in terms of auditing the data, in terms of diving into the details. And with ISVs, we typically face the case of shared data sets. And so many clients and clients of the ISV have access to the same data set, but of course, one client cannot see the data of the other. So we really need to be able to tailor the access to the specific parts of the data set to the user that is logging in. And that's where embedding comes in. And we really need to make sure that those dashboards fit into the ISV's products. And we really need to make sure that authenticating the end user on the analytical dashboard is seamless. And more than in enterprise applications, even an end user doesn't want to know that we are putting Quicksight as a technology in the user experience. They just want to see the dashboard. They want to see their own data. They cannot see the data of somebody else. So integrating who that user is and authenticating that user on the different pieces of technology under the cover is super important. And from experience, we can share that Quicksight is super powerful in terms of that. It really fits into the AWS ecosystem. It speaks the same language as the other APIs that are provided by AWS, and it is able to push information and authentication information that it gathered down to other technologies. So making this personalization thing, which is typically fairly complex in terms of governance, making it super convenient to do. All of the advantages that we saw in the enterprise stack come back here as well. It's also business driven. It's also pilot driven. It can scale. It can scale out when we onboard more users, and it can scale down when we need to build the data warehouse underneath. But the integration piece, the embedding piece, comes on top of that. So, what did we learn from this? How did we approach many of these projects, and then how do we plan on doing the coming ones? We always work through a strict timeline, just because the change process and the governance process is super important to us. And we work with this idea of a sprint. A sprint is a block of 2 weeks of time for a team of developers to make sure that they can deliver something at the end of the sprint that actually adds business value. And when an organization wants to understand whether Quicksight is something for them or not, or they want to do a real project after they have made that decision, we typically start with a first sprint to set the business scope and set up AWS. It takes about 2 weeks, really with the emphasis on understanding business, with making sure that we understand the data sources, that we know how clean the data is, that we know how to integrate it. And it takes us just a little bit of time to set up Quicksight. If a client is already an AWS client, it can be done in hours sometimes. If they're not an AWS client, it doesn't take much longer to set up the base infrastructure. We actually automated most of the work ourselves already. And at the end of the first sprint, we should have a business discussion about the business cases that we are going to automate, the feasibility of that, and the requirements and the demand from business teams from there on. And the second sprint is actually about preparing the data. So it typically takes a bit more time because it's technical work. And especially if you're new to an organization and you need to work with the data for the first time, many questions may come up. So we typically take a sprint for that 2 weeks with a team of 1 to 3 persons to make sure we get that data prepared for the use cases that we defined. And then this third sprint is actually delivery of a first iteration of the dashboards already. And it may sound really fast, but it is actually feasible to do so. And we have the data available, we have the business requirements available. Loading that data into Quicksight in a basic setup isn't that complex. And the value of this is that we can co-create this first set of dashboards with business. So we can really sit next to a business analyst, really show them what we made, they can give us feedback, and we can make adjustments live during those meetings. It's an important step when it comes down to change management, because our business counterparts, they really understand that Quicksight has a flat learning curve, super important with them, and we get immediate feedback on the quality of our data preparation work. And that's actually cycling. And after that, there's a fourth sprint where we basically focus on transferring knowledge and preparing the automation. So in the second sprint, we did some data preparation, and typically it's a one-off type of work because we really needed to have base materials to work with, but nothing is automated yet. Automation is something that takes most time, and it is really hard to explain to business people why it takes a lot of time. So we really want to make sure that people understand what they are going to get when they decide to invest into automation. And that's what Sprint 4 takes. Really mapping out the automation side and transferring knowledge of the work that was done up till then. If clients decide not to move into the automation part, the whole process is still valuable, because when we're in this stage, we're still able to update the data in Quicksight manually. It still takes a bit of time from an analyst to do that sort of job, but often organizations who start out with business intelligence, they already have people doing that sort of job. So it's another technology, but it brings new types of value and faster time to market for new insights. So it's already valuable. So we've done this a few times, quite a few times actually over the past few years, and we have a few learnings from that. And the first is to strategize the ecosystem. So the data space, it's lately very hype driven. So there are lots of new technologies, lots of new visions, hype words, buzzwords, and it might be hard to keep focus on your BI project. Once the project grows. So we really push on strategizing the ecosystem really early on, actually in the first sprint already, to make sure that developers who onboard, business people who onboard, they just can keep focusing on adding the business value and not get distracted by hype, buzz, marketing that doesn't really add something to business. Our second learning is to launch the service with business users ASAP. So the last thing we want is to hide in a corner for a few months, building something nobody understands, and then showcasing something in a demo that nobody really understands. So this co-creation part is super important. That's why we really value the fact that most of the technical work is automated in Quicksight, and we can really focus on the data work. It means that we can sit together with business people in the first week, show something tangible, and then build the real projects as we dive deeper into the project. And a last thing we would like to share is to automate your user onboarding from the start of the project. If you have chosen Quicksight as a target technology for a larger rollout, let's say you're an ISV and you want to make sure that Quicksight is distributed to your end users, take this extra step, do this embedding of user authentication really early on in the project. At some point, projects like these, they will become successful. And when they become successful, they scale, or they have the capacity to scale really fast, really hard. We have had a few projects where user onboarding was manual, and those people can become bottlenecks during the scaling process. And that's a very tough thing to handle because you're already quite deep into the project. People want to go live, people want to see results, and then there is this super manual thing to do, typically done by one or two persons. You might not want to have this bottleneck. It's a very small effort to automate very early on in the project, but it's super valuable. So, if you don't want to do this all by yourself, we can understand this. Yeah, we have done this a number of times before. We have learned a lot. Some things worked, some things worked a bit less. And by now, we started to see blueprints and how to do business analytics in a very lean and a very business-oriented way using AWS components. Typically, we start with Quicksight. Typically, we expand within the AWS ecosystem. And some of these blueprints can be prepackaged. Proof of values, pilot projects, proof of concepts. We have blueprints for that. Typical roadmaps, playbooks, how to approach it, how to do it, who to involve, what to expect when. And those are things we typically take to new clients. The same goes for architecture. We have done a number of iterations on different types of data analytics, platforms and products and setups on cloud, on AWS. And by now we have understood how to organize that. So how to organize the technology, but also how to organize the processes around it. If you do data analytics on cloud, it's totally different from doing data analytics in your traditional setup. Governance is different, scale is different, delivery is different, go-to-market is different. And we also have playbooks on that. It helped us to scale pretty fast, to onboard new people who were not involved in cloud-first data analytics at a high pace. Also to teach younger people how to be super productive in no time. It's a result of years of work of doing data analytics in cloud. And we noticed that it brings a lot of value to new clients who are making the move to cloud only now. And then as well for people, how to onboard new people, how to train, how to teach, how to coach on Quicksight, on other AWS components as well, is something that comes up more and more. And that's because when data analytics projects become successful, organizations typically don't want to be dependent on outside service providers. They really want to make sure that their internal colleagues are able to own and to govern and to scale those platforms. But those technologies are new, those ways of governing are new. So sometimes they need a bit of training, of a bit of coaching along the way. And that's something we do more and more. And it's not just for Quicksight, but it's also for the broader AWS analytics space. And so if we do successful analytics projects, it's more components out of the analytics space. So we are going a bit over time, and we have a few questions. So let me reach out over email. And we will make sure that your questions get answered within, say, 24 hours. If you would like to ask us more questions, be sure to contact us over email. So my mail is joris@tropos.io. And Manuel, I hope people can contact you over mail as well.
Sure, no problem.
Okay, so time to wrap up here. I would like to thank you for your interest and your attendance today. Please make sure to check your email for a recording of this webinar. And we will be hosting more webinars like this in the near future, and based on data analytics, based on doing business intelligence in cloud, both on the technology side as well as on the governance side. So I'm hoping to see and hear you on those other webinars as well. So for now, thanks for attending and have a great day.